From international collaborations, we move to empowering stories of impact and equity, with women leading the way, breaking glass ceilings. Anjali Raina, Executive Director at HBRC, moderates a session that promises to inspire, feature trailblazing women who have shattered barriers across sectors.
Good morning and welcome to everybody. This is on changing mindsets and changing contexts, and women who are leading that journey. Oh, welcome Atul. So this is a session on changing mindsets, changing contexts, and women who are leading that journey, shattering glass ceilings in the process. The news isn't good. Statistics on female participation in the workforce are abysmal. And literacy rates for women are only 63% compared to 89% for men in India. But this session is not about the brakes that hinder women. There are women who have risen above these barriers, literally into the clouds. We have our female fighter pilots, Avani, Bhavna, Mohana, the first female fighter pilots in the Indian Air Force. In science and tech, we have Tessie Thomas. Politics, arts and entertainment, sports, social activism, women have made their mark. And in business and corporate leadership, we have Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw at Biocon, Naina Lal Kedwai in the finance sector, Arundhati Bhattacharya from State Bank, and now in tech. And the Harvard Business School India Research Center, which is where I work, has supported the research of HBS Professor Boris Groisberg, who's looked at what has made these star women possible. So what are those skills and competencies that enable these women to break the barriers and move ahead? And that's what we're going to be exploring today in the conversation with these four remarkable women who are with us today. They've made their mark in academia, business, entrepreneurship, and corporate leadership. And we'll explore with them what skills and pivotal moments enable their success. I'm going to start. Let's give them a hand. Come on, welcome everybody. Let's have some energy in the room. The first question is for Tanushri. Tanushri, you've broken a number of barriers. Tanushri is the founder of Doubtnut. I'm not going to introduce everybody formally because their bios are already on the app, and that will save time. But Tanushri has broken a number of barriers. You've broken a number of barriers. You've had a traditional education with Delhi Public School and IIT Delhi. And then you had a steady corporate job, and you left that to become an entrepreneur. Could you share an insight related to how your career trajectory moved ahead and the accelerators that moved you upward and ahead?
Thank you, Anjali, and hello to all. So, I think I was just very lucky to have grown up in a background in my formative years where I never saw any bias at home. I naturally took on to maths. My formative years were in Bokaro, and those areas people really focus on math, and that kind of made me select IIT as the college. Although I would say that if it were to my parents' choice, they would probably have not selected IIT. But once I said that I wanted to prepare for JEE, they were fairly supportive. Even at IIT, I think things went well, and just because there are such few girls, you actually see that as a positive bias for you, because when you get recognized fairly soon. Even in the corporate job, I think I was lucky to get into a corporate job where things were going good. But I think at one point I started feeling that the amount of input that I wanted to put in, the incentives at the corporate job were probably not aligned to that, and we decided to kind of get into entrepreneurship. We did a traditional brick and mortar business for about 7-8 years, and then once we got into this VC funded space, in the beginning it's hard to raise funds. Like as intelligent or as smart you think you are, it's very hard. So as a woman, sometimes you tend to think, even though it may be just based on the merit that you're not able to raise funds, sometimes you think maybe I am a woman founder, maybe my weird spouses, and that's why it's difficult. But once you cross that bridge, it's fine. I think the biggest moment of conflict as a woman that I faced was when the company was growing rapidly. Every year we were going 5x into valuation. The markets were growing, and I'd conceived my second child. I was also in the market raising funds. I didn't know when and whether to tell the investors about it. I tried to find a lot of literature on internet to see how you break the news, whether you break the news. Is it something confidential? Do you even need to tell anybody? And I was rehearsing for a week as to which investor to pick and when to tell them. I was like walking up and down, like, how do I break the news? And the first time I broke the news to one of my, circle of trust investors, and he was like, this is a good news. Why are you sounding so sorry? And that is when I realized that, it's not, and he also said that, it's a marathon. It's not like a 1 to 2 year journey where you are not going to get on with your life. All you need to do is make a transition plan. And, I think while I made the transition plan, also, as a founder, you always know that, this company, when it's growing, it's going to need you. So even though there was a transition plan in place, I think I came back to office within a week of delivering my second daughter. So, I mean, I think, and we're in this country, I think while there may be many things that you're unlucky with, but one thing that you're very lucky with is the amount of professional help that can be available for your babies and the family. So, I think that mental barrier that I had in my head and the the support that the investor and many other investors provided, told you that you can just get on with your work, continue to grow your company without any barrier.
Thank you, Tanushri. That's not easy to, not an easy story to share, but thank you. I think there's a lot of learning. I'll come back to it. But let me move on to Sumita. Sumita, you have had the most remarkable corporate career. There's not a single company that I wanted to work for that you don't already have on your resume. Starting with Aptech, NIIT, Wipro, Datagraft, Microsoft, Adobe, and now AWS. So in this long corporate journey, what is it that stands out for you? Please share 2 memories of your pivotal moments of success and the insights you gained.
Right. Thank you, Anjali. So for me, it's 25 plus years of experience, and I think every organization was a learning. Every organization was a milestone. But then since I'm only supposed to talk about 2, so I'll talk about Microsoft. And this was the time when I was nominated and I got awarded as Platinum Club. And this is a club which happens for all over the people internationally. And I was a top performer worldwide, the highest attainment for them. And the proud moment for me was that, standing on a stage with 13 of us were only selected from India, and I was the only woman. So that was a big moment for me, standing beside Satya Nadella and my India president and Bhaskar Pramanik, Steve Ballmer, all of them. So that was I think one of the biggest milestones of my career. But what was a learning and what was the even bigger proud moment for me was that Microsoft also had a policy wherein the gold and platinum club members will be sent for a paid vacation. So we were sent to Hawaii, and I went with my family, my husband, my daughters, and my mother. And the moment when we landed and the way they treated my family, and when the senior executives were there to greet each one of them, and when they came back and told my mother that what a good upbringing you gave, and we are so lucky to have her here, and my husband that, you must be supporting her so well. That's why we have her here, and these are the people who raises our bar. So that was a learning I had that, performance is, there are so many people who are performers in the corporate world, but then the way the corporates can treat their employees really make a difference. It's not only about awards, it's also about how you make people feel. So that was one learning for me. Second, definitely, I would talk about AWS. So AWS is supposed to be absolutely a technical organization, and a lot of people like us, Microsoft, we aspired, in our next career moves, where do we want to go? And just because you have done fantastic years of sales, you will never be hired in AWS. It's all about our leadership policy, principles, and how are you our fitment to this organization. So I was getting interviewed for a role as principal business development manager who was supposed to manage top 5 skilling customers for AWS in India. And there are some 7 rounds of interview, and one of the round there was a bar raiser, which I got to know later. His name was Vincent Kua. So he was the APJ leader for public sector, and a lot of 1 hour interview. And one moment he asked me, what do you think you bring on table for AWS? Okay, and I, being Sumita Gupta, was so passionately telling him about my 25 years of journey, 20 years of journey, and the relationship I drive, etc., etc. But then after a pause, he tells me, no, you're here only to take care of our customers. There are 5 top customers. If at all if you are selected, you're only going to manage these customers, ensure their growth is being taken care. They're at the best hands. So that was again another learning that, here is an organization, they're absolutely aligned with my thoughts. I've been associated with this industry for so long that how do I give back, right? My own principles matched what the organization expects for me. So it was an absolute, he just in one word told me what am I expected to do. So in AWS, everything, it starts from a customer, our discussion, our engagement, all our development, services, products, every single thing is around our customers. So customer first is what we do. Thank you, Anjali.
Thank you very much. And obviously, putting the customer first and the employee first, as you learned, has helped you in your career to move ahead. I'm sure you do it for your employees and your customers too.
Yes, I try.
Yeah. So, Meenal, I'm going to move on to you. You've broken a number of barriers. You've been one academic who has combined teaching, research, and administration. Being in the academic world myself, I know that most academics like to do teaching and research. A few also combine that with admin. You have done that, and you're only the second female dean at your institution, which is really quite great. So, could you share one insight related to how your career trajectory moved ahead and the accelerators that moved you upward and ahead?
Yeah, thank you, Anjali, and good afternoon to all of you. So I would, as Anjali said, there are, for academician to be an administrator, there are 3 factors which we need to balance. And I think my potential to be able to consistently perform in all these 3 is something that took me ahead. And here, I would want to say that the second thing that really helped me was I joined Pilani Goa campus at a time when it just started. So that is being there at the right moment, right time is also something that really helped me in the growth. But with respect to the accelerators, I got picked up for administration right in the beginning because although it was, since it was a new campus and many of us were young faculty, the founding director at that time noticed my potential and immediately I was picked up for one of the administrative roles. And because of my performance and, also in terms of research, being able to manage that somewhere gave me the platform to keep moving ahead where consecutive directors gave me more important roles like later on I went on to become HOD, Associate Dean, etc. So here with respect, so these acted as my accelerators, but being a woman, because this is something that quite a few academicians will do, but being a woman, I think what really also helped is, one thing is the type of ecosystem that I had. So being in a campus, we all, live together. It's a campus, residential campus, students and faculty live on campus. So I'm bringing this up because for organizations, I think it's also important to pay attention to, how the supporting ecosystem evolves, because if you have good daycare facilities, if the woman is not, is somewhere, has, back of the mind, there's no tension about the children, etc., that gives a supporting, it gives a push for the person to perform to the maximum potential. So I was lucky I had a ecosystem where maybe I'm held up in meeting, I just need to send a message to somebody, pick up my child from the daycare. So this type of support system is something which really gives you a push, and I'm bringing this up because we should not hesitate to take help from people. So that's very important, not to, to think about, oh, can I ask for this favor? You ask for favors and you do them in return, and that is what will help as a community, everybody, to move ahead. So that I think the ecosystem gave me the second, I consider it as one of my accelerators. And of course the family support. So like Tanushri said, I was also lucky. My parents helped whenever my parents were not around, my father-in-law pulled in. And taking help from family, I might have been lucky in that sense, but again, women should not hesitate. And here, I also feel that, responsibilities with respect to whenever it's a woman who has to decide, and maybe small roles like after going back home, what is to be cooked today? Okay, if the maid is not coming, who will take care of the child? If there is a sudden holiday in the school. So these decisions have to be not taken only by the women. So if you want to grow, if you want to it has to be a partnership. And this is something we have to keep stressing, not only to yourself, to your partner, to the other women community. And I think these are some things that I followed, and they helped me in, being where I am today. And you just said, yeah, this question was only about accelerators, but can I just bring in one aspect that why women being in this position. So being at the top level, somewhere women exhibit more empathy, and also maybe because biases are there at all levels, so we cannot be, there's no clean slate anywhere. But because you have experienced it, like I said, I was lucky not to have had a supporting family, etc. But even then, these biases tend to, somewhere play a role. And sitting at a top position, I think we are able to think more rationally with more empathy, and pay attention to, being fair to everyone, because at some level or the other you have experienced biases. So I think that really helps.
Having experienced the bias ourselves, it is easier for us to be empathetic and to see the biases that exist. And I think, as Tanushri pointed out, you have a mental bias, you have something like this. So I always say that when I was hired in my job, the company hired one woman, but they got 4. They got me, they got my mother, they got my mother-in-law, they got my aunt, they got my maid. My husband went to work. But I always used to worry that when my daughter went to work, what would happen? Because I assumed that she would work, her husband would work, I would work, her mother-in-law would work, and who would be there? So she's been lucky. We have a supportive system, but the whole family has pulled in. But that is something that we need to understand, that it can't be only the family ecosystem, because people live away from their families. And so the relevance and the importance of organizations to create that supportive structure, which is the point you brought out, Meenal, is very, very important. I'm going to move on to Jigyasa, and then I'll summarize this part and move on to the next stage. Jigyasa, you've broken a number of barriers as a co-founder and chief executive. You're working in a very difficult space. Could you share one insight related to how your career trajectory moved ahead and the accelerators that helped you?
Absolutely. Thank you, Anjali ji, and thank you everyone for sharing beautifully and vulnerably. Thank you everybody for listening. I want to share a little bit about what it means to follow and do something you're really, really passionate about. And my journey and my experience is incomparable to everyone else on stage. This is also literally my second job ever. But I want to share that I started in education right out of my undergrad, and I taught in a low-income community for 2 years when Slam Out Loud was still, a budding passion project, and I never thought that this will turn into an organization or will be something I'll be doing full-time, employing people, creating impact, working with so many children. I had this beautiful moment, which was also full of vulnerability, full of sorrow, when I did this class in Kashmir where I was interning with the government at that point of time, and I walked into this classroom to do a spoken word poetry workshop. And I asked children to pick an emotion and took them through a journey of writing a small poem on that emotion. And most children in that classroom in Kashmir ended up writing about anger, confusion, sadness, hate. And I experienced my moment of obligation there, which was how might we create more safe spaces for children to talk about how they feel. Now that moment of obligation is also my greatest moment of joy, is also my greatest moment of saying that this is something I feel passionately about and really want to pursue, really want to get other people on board as I do this. And I think being able to follow that path was an accelerator, and having the support of my family, my friends, the community around me, mentors, creating an ecosystem of support that said that, here's something you're good at, here's something the world needs, here's something that really would make a difference to the world, and you would feel like there's a legacy to your life. And importantly, at the same point, will bring you joy and satisfaction. And them encouraging me to do that really, really was an impetus and accelerator. Another one that added on to it was, after I started Slam Out Loud, a couple of years down the line, I also got an opportunity to get a scholarship, go to Harvard and study learning design. And being able to study a subject that I felt so strongly about, having the opportunity to study for things like joy, passion, where does everything that I believe in converge together, I think that was another accelerator. The kind of people I was able to meet on that journey, the kind of support I was able to gather, and all of that came together to really accelerate my own journey.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jigyasa. You've actually brought out a very important point. As I was talking about Professor Boris Groysberg, who's identified the common factors across star women. And one of the most important things that star women do have is this external network that you're talking about. Each one of you has actually touched on this external network in some form or the other, whether it is the investor community or whether it is the family outside, or as in your case, Sumita, you told me earlier that it was people who were in one company whom you'd worked with, who moved to another company and then called you. And similarly, Jigyasa, the people who helped you to get to Harvard and sponsored you there and so on and so forth, the people you met there. So this external network is something that's very important. Men tend to have a network within the company. They tend to build their networks within the company. And the good news is, or the bad news for the men, is that when they move from one company to another, because they lack that internal network in the other company, they don't always succeed. But when women move from one company to another, like Sumita has done, they tend to succeed because their networks were external, they were not internal. So that's something for women to remember, that external networks is really important. The other point that came out very clearly with Tanushri was negotiation. And the barriers, the ability to negotiate, the barriers to negotiation, these are something that we create for ourselves. Men tend to do it automatically, and some women, like Naina Lal, for example, and my daughter, are fantastic at negotiation. But many women don't have that skill. And if you consciously develop it, like I learned from Boris, it can help you in your life. So consciously looking at every moment and seeing whether it's a negotiating moment is something that's critical to do. And the third is on conflict management, but I'll come to that separately. I'm going to move on to another piece, which is something that I read by Aparna Piramal Raje, who's a journalist and also from Harvard Business School. And she writes about the fact that mentors are considered to be very important in most people's lives. But actually, there are 4 people who help us in our career trajectory. One is a role model, the second is a mentor, the third is a coach, and the fourth is a sponsor. And I'm going to ask the ladies on the panel over here to help me describe this so that each one of us can understand what important roles they play. I'm going to start with Meenal. Meenal, will you talk to me about the role model that you had mentioned?
Yeah, sure. So for me, probably, my role model was somewhere whom I noticed in my childhood. So maybe when I was 5 or 6 years old, I noticed that one of our family friends, she was a professor. And at that time, this is like more than 40 years ago, she used to ride a geared scooter. So this is something which really caught on to me, and it stayed with me. So I must tell you, the first vehicle that I bought was a geared scooter, because I thought that somewhere conveys, that non-geared scooters are not for women. So she, of course, went on to be, she was a professor, and somehow I, inadvertently, maybe I followed in her path. So I also am an academician. She held positions, and maybe in that sense, she's a role model for me, because at that time, being a woman, going abroad, doing her postdoc abroad, etc. These were things which were quite unheard of. Very few women did this. So she was my role model. And of course, I would want to mention that I was very lucky to be brought up in a family where my parents, especially my father, never did any distinction. So I remember that maybe I got my first bicycle when I was in the 6th standard or something, and the first time it was punctured, he took me and the cycle to the puncture repair shop, and he said, you observe how it is done, so that next time there's a problem, you handle it yourself. And I learned so many skills. He ensured that there was no difference between what my brother did and I did in terms of repairing, painting, maybe small life skills which gave you the confidence that there is no distinction. Everybody needs to do everything. Everybody needs to learn everything. And of course, maybe my sensors were always on to notice, women who stood up, who made a difference, and that is how I kept noticing, and small things which I think make a difference. Like, for example, I had noticed somebody say, in my teenage, I noticed one of our acquaintances say that, why is it that women, and this is again quite a while ago, why is it that women have to, wear, say, a Mangal Sutra or exhibit that they are married, whereas for men there are no such distinctions. And that caught on to me, and I decided, yes, I should not be doing it. And at that time it was difficult, because I did my PhD after my marriage, so I lived in a different city and did my PhD. And because I did not exhibit, whatever, that I was a married woman, there were even scientists, lady scientists from the institution who sent me indirect and direct messages that I should not be doing this. I should be, wearing the Mangal Sutra. But probably at that time, that defiance gave me the courage, and I'm happy that today I see these customs have really started dying down, and somewhere I'm happy I was able to make a small difference. So I feel, role models are people we keep seeing, and as we keep growing, today I would say my directors, whatever they teach me.
You're a role model, Meenal.
Yeah.
Now you're a
Thank
role
you.
model for other people.
Yeah,
So thank
thank
you
you.
very much for sharing
Thank
this.
you.
It's very important. There's a fabulous book called The Wonder Girls, which has different careers of women who are astronauts and sports people. So different types of role models exist now. But let me move on to the next person, which is Jigyasa. I want you to talk briefly about a mentor in your life.
Yes. So a couple of mentors, and a lot of them have now come to Slam Out Loud's advisory board. So I wouldn't really choose one, but I'll try to get the essence together of what it meant to have a mentor. So Shams of Tabrizi, beautiful poet and philosopher, has said in the past that the only thing you need to get by in your life is to have a mirror. And for me, all the mentors that I've had in my journey so far have been people who've been mirrors to me, have really showed me who I am, and while holding me gently. Sometimes when people say, oh, be brutally honest, they're more brutal than honest. And all my mentors, while being really, really honest, have created the safe space for me to express, the safe space for me to grow and not panic as I grow. I think one of the biggest insights that has come from a mentor that is extremely useful in my life and extremely useful for all of us who sometimes feel like they're caught in a race and have to get somewhere on a certain speed. It's also a lesson from Vipassana, which is when you're going from dark to light, or even if you're going from more less light to more light, as long as you're in the direction of light, how does the speed matter? And you can get there at your own speed. I wish I could have used that as a kid when I was asked to eat food quickly. I'd be like, as long as I'm eating it, like speed doesn't matter. But I think that's a big lesson I'm trying to live in my own life.
Thank you.
I want to move towards
Jigyasa.
that.
Thank you very much for describing how important it is to be honest rather than brutal when you're being a mentor. Thank you, Jigyasa. And I'm rushing along because we have limited time. Tanushri, please, Smita. Sumita, please share with me about the experience of having a coach.
Okay. So for me, I think life is, I continuously learn things, okay? And I kind of push myself to do something difficult which I've never done before. So I will just share my experience with, again, AWS. I've got into a company which is hardcore tech. And I had top customers wherein the engagement level was CTOs and the product managers, DevOps managers, they all talk tech. So going to a customer meeting, and since AWS is customer obsessed, so we had solution architects with us for managing all large customers. I'll go with my solution architect, his name was Gaurav Rawat. And I'll see them doing some whiteboarding, okay, talking 3 hours, and customers so happy, so many options they're talking, and I'm hardly able to understand 10, 20% of whatever he's talking, okay. So my journey, or I would say my coach was my solution architect. So my way of learning was that while he was not nominated as my coach, but I chose him as my coach because I wanted to learn. And the way I learned that, every meeting it was a mandate, whether I am needed or not needed, I'll go sit 3 hours, understand all those terminologies. 1 month, I was understanding 50%. 3 months, I was understanding all. 4th month, I'm contributing. So again, it's not about people. Coaches are meant to, generally that's the word means that they will teach you either what are the better techniques of swimming, or maybe coaching into a particular activity. It can be IIT JEE coaching, right? But coaches can also be from life skills. Coaches can be from, the work you do. So whether they're young or they're a little junior to you in rank, it really doesn't matter. We can learn from anybody. That was my learning, and he was my coach.
Thank you, Sumita. Thank you very much. And Tanushri, coming to a really important part, which is the sponsor. So can you share your experience with that?
So I think as a VC-funded startup or as a startup, one of the things that you are doing, I think 80% of your time besides building product and businesses, selling your team, selling yourself, selling your company. And I think that's what you are doing. But there's no better way than somebody else sell it for you while you are not in the room. And I think that is a very critical part, not for only a VC-funded startup entrepreneur, but everybody in life, where people are able to speak about you. But for the people to able to speak about you, what is important that they need to know about what you are doing. So it is extremely important that you have a set of people, or maybe in our case, it's almost like everybody that they become a sponsor, and you need to, besides building the product and business, reach out to people in conversations, in messages, in texts, and continue to tell them about what you are doing. Sometimes, as a person who you think is successful, you feel like, why should I be talking about myself? But that's a very, very important task. And, I think women do it less, I see, especially because they feel that their work is to get to office and then come back, not talk about themselves as much. It's like, one of the most important pieces that, has been very instrumental in being able to grow and get investments as a startup.
Thank you very much. Tanushri, you're not the only founder who's told me this. The founder of a very, very large e-commerce retail company also told me. She said that she was talking to me she said, can I ride with you in the car? And then she told me all about her company. And I said, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all this. And she said, Anjali, I do this on a regular basis because you never know when somebody is going to ask you about me. And if you know about my company, you'll say good things. So that was when I learned that sponsors don't happen only by accident. They also can be created by you learning how to talk in a non-arrogant, humble, and non-boastful way about what you've done. We don't need to shy away from that, which very many women do. So that is another life skill. So just to summarize, one is to have a bunch of external networks. The second is to have the ability to deal with conflicts. The third is the ability to negotiate. And then the ability to identify role models, coaches, mentors, and sponsors in your life and make the best use of them. These are the things that can have made star women, not only the four in front of us, but star women across the firmament shine very, very brightly. And that's available to everybody. These are secrets, especially for women, but men can also adopt them. So with that, that brings us to the end of the session. We have a minute left. If anybody has any questions, we could ask, or if any of you want to make a closing comment,
I just want to make a comment on this topic, okay? When thanks to Shika, she's our marketing lead, and I generally do a lot of work. Not very keen to come participate, talk, speak, okay? So she was very pushy this time. No, this time you have to do it, and thanks to her that I'm here. And I just told her, what will I talk? Breaking the glass ceiling. Oh, I'm not going to talk about all the diversity thing there. It's a very difficult topic and I don't believe in it, right? So what I picked up from you, Anjali, this is something I'm sharing with all, that when I and Anjali were speaking yesterday, so she said, for us, there was never a ceiling. And there's no question of us breaking a ceiling. We never saw a ceiling. We never saw a barrier. We just went ahead. So I take this session that ways.
Thank you. And I will then end by saying that there was a lady called Marge Magna many years ago at Citibank when I was there. And all of us women around the group who were very successful and all that said, oh, there was no barrier, I made it, I was good, and so on. And she said, all of you women who are so powerful and have made it need to help women who haven't. Because there are many women out there who have not been so lucky, who have not had such a supportive firmament. So we need to remember that while there are women who are shining very brightly, there are other women who are lying discarded on the ground. And it is our role and responsibility to enable those women also to shine. And therefore, sharing these stories and sharing these accelerators is what's important. Creating those supportive systems is what's important. So thank you, Sumita, for reminding me of that. Our time is up. I know Meenal had a closing comment, but I'm sorry. I'm going to end. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here.
Thank you all so much. I've met these ladies at the speaker lounge before, and they're the most inspiring, beautiful people inside and out, women or men, that I've ever met. So thank you all for your time, for your comments, and for being you.